I was terrified to quit a job I'd spent 12 years building. It felt like my life was completely in the hands of my boss. I had zero experience in the business I was about to start, but fast forward 12 months, I quit that job and now bring in over $50,000 per month. I've completely redesigned my lifestyle. And so in this video, what I'm going to be breaking down and showing you is the 3 steps that I took that made quitting my job so much easier and allowed me to be where I am today. My name's Jonathon Perez, and I worked in real estate sales for about 12 years. In real estate sales, it's commission only. So there's high stress and constantly I was living in anxiety about money. And so the real turning point for me was I actually had this moment of realization thinking, if I actually stop working, for example, take a holiday, the money stops too. And that realization made me think, is this it for me? Is this what my life is going to look like for the next 5 to 10 years? And what I saw didn't excite me. And so then I began to question, there's got to be another way to make money. I had spent 12 years aspiring to be the $1 million real estate agent, right? I was working in a very good industry where you can make lots of money, but I didn't like the model. I didn't like how I was going to end up, like I said, in the next 5 to 10 years. The first thing that I had to do is explore money-making side hustles, right? So in 2025, there is absolutely no reason as to why you can't go out there and at least explore other ways to make money. Traditionally, like I was, 12 years ago, I came out of school and I thought, you know what, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I ended up following in the footsteps of my dad, who was a real estate agent. And so he invited me to work with him on a Saturday. And I said, great, you know what, let's see how this goes. Maybe I can earn some money to go to schoolies back then. And so anyway, I realized that isn't the only way to make money. And so we've got tools like ChatGPT, we've got tools like YouTube, just to go out and explore, right? You've got to realize that kids out there today are making tons of money online, right? Times are changing. And so once you start to explore and without any pressure, right? You don't need to go out and say, right, I need to do this business model. You just got to go out and explore and see what's out there. Treat this almost like a hobby. When I went and did my research, I was like, okay, let's just try to find a hobby. I've got free time outside of my full-time role that I can spend, let's see what I can do and see if I can make some money. So treat it as a hobby first, like you're learning a new skill, no different to either playing golf or something like that. And so once you start to actually go out and explore, you'll start to realize that there's actually very easy ways to make money. And so I nearly went down the path of doing drop shipping. An example, right? By the way, I'm not suggesting that you go and do drop shipping. I'm just saying that that's what I nearly did, right? Because the model there is very simple, right? You run ads to sell a product and then you don't even have to buy the product, right? And then once someone purchases the product, then the distributor will send the product to the customer. You take a portion of the profit of the money that customer spent, and the distributor gets the bulk of it for the product, right? Pretty simple business model. Like the fact that you can actually not buy stock, just get a laptop, make a pretty website, run ads, sell products without having to store any inventory and have to pay anything to buy that inventory. It's awesome, right? And that's how kids are making money. So I nearly went down that path, but luckily I had a friend that kind of soundboard and challenged my thinking, and he actually went down that path and told me the challenges of that business model. And so I said, you know what, rather than going head first, let me see what else is out there. And so long story short, I ended up going down the path of social media marketing, right? I realized, you know what, I'm going to leverage what I worked on for 12 years as a real estate agent, and I'm going to actually focus in that niche, but also do something completely different, which is actually help real estate agents, because that's what I knew best. And that's my competitive advantage, right? And so what I did from there is I said, right, this is something that I think I can do. I can see it. I can believe it, right? I can see myself doing it. So the next step is to find a well-established mentor with a course, right? Because you just want to find who's doing it. How can I learn from someone how to do what I'm wanting to do and make money from it? All you want to do is just make your first $1,000, right? And if you can make your first $1,000, see where it leads after that. And so the course that I found was one by Iman Gatsi. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the entrepreneur space that know of Iman Gatsi. He's a huge info product business owner. And so he was running a course called Agency Accelerator or Agency Navigator back then. But anyway, I found that course. I saw that it taught me exactly what I needed to learn. And I said, right, that could be something that I will dive into. Okay, so now you've done some exploring and you found a course, a mentor that can teach you how to do it. That's what I did, right? I did some exploring. I found a mentor. How can I learn to do this? It's got coaching, etc., etc. The second thing that I need to do is find out, what is it actually costing me to live? If I was to go all in this business model and have this business model fund my lifestyle, what is that number? And that number is going to be your new target, because that number there, once you calculate it, is going to tell you how much you need to quit. And once you have that number, then it's kind of like you should get a reignition. You should reignite that flame to say, holy crap, I can actually manage that, right? Now, by the way, if that number is huge, then the reality that you're going to have to live below your means a little bit, right? If you leverage yourself and you're living this crazy lifestyle, that's where people get stuck. And I was in a similar scenario, right? For me, the number that I needed to hit was $4K a month, right? That was to cover my mortgage, right? Keep the roof over my head. And that was to cover my living expenses, obviously eating, petrol. And, it's funny, I say petrol because I also had a car. Like the car was paid off. I didn't have a loan on it, but it would sit on the road. It was actually getting hit by other cars, which meant that I had to go and take it to the panel beater, and then it would affect my insurance. And then I'm paying registration on that car. And when I actually decided to do this full time, I no longer needed a car, right? And so anyway, that's going far ahead, because by this point, I actually sold my car after I quit my job, because I'm like, well, I don't need a car anymore. I walk to the gym and I work from home. That's another point. But where I'm at with this point is that once you know this number, it alleviates that fear of financial uncertainty, because you have to be able to know that you are going to go all in at some point, which means you got to be prepared to sacrifice. So treat it as a hobby at first, but you also want to realistically have a goal, right? If I do this and I sacrifice my time and hours to build this from scratch, is there a way for me to actually progress to the lifestyle that I want to live, right? And that's what I did for me. So I got that number. I said, right, I have the course that can teach me. I believe this model, right? I can see it happening, and this is the number that I need to get to. I was all in, right? And so everything up until this point was on me, right? Now, by the way, I'm not suggesting that you quit your job. I don't want to be an advocate to people that say, hey, you know what, be your own boss and quit your job and burn the boats. Because truthfully, I actually think that's a little bit silly. I would never put myself in the position, or I'd rather not put myself in the position where if I had gone back in time saying, you know what, I believe this business model, I hadn't even landed my first client, I don't know if it works. I'm saying, you know what, I'm going to burn the boats and just put my partner and everyone around me under so much stress because I'm deciding to go all in on this business model. And people do that, right? But you don't need to do that in this day and age. And so what I came across was a fork in the road, right? And so I had two choices. The choices were stay where I am and keep doing what I'm doing, or change my life forever. And you can tell where this headed after that. And so I now know what I want to do, and I now know the number that I need to reach to free myself from this job that I no longer wanted. And so what I did was I said, right, I'm just going to work it as a side hustle. So I continued doing my job, and every waking hour that I had outside of that job, I would study and I would literally execute on everything this course had to offer. I even went as far as buying a secondhand MacBook, which I remember vividly. A friend of mine sold it to me at a discount, right? It was about $1,500 or something like that. And I said, this is what I needed. I'm going to build my business from scratch following this course with that laptop. Because the truth is, a job is a job, right? I figured that, if I fail, let's say I went all into this business and I failed, you can either keep going or you can go and get another job, because the job is always going to be a job. And if that job, you can't get it, you're going to be able to find another job until you can pick yourself up and say, you know what, let's go at it again, right? But the one thing that I knew would haunt me for the rest of my life was regret. Not knowing that if I didn't go for it, I would literally waste my entire life doing something that no longer served me or fulfilled me. And so I did everything. I put my heart and soul into execution. I built the business from scratch using that computer. And so I'm talking about cold calls. I'm talking about cold emails. I'm talking about cold DMs on Instagram, on Facebook. I was reaching out to every single person that I could speak to, right? I read a book, Alex Hormozzi's book, which is $1 Million Leads. And it literally said, grab your whole contact list on your phone. And I'm pretty sure he said, DM every single person on that thing and say, hey, do you have someone who might be, interested in running ads, right? That's the stuff that I did until I could land that first client and get proof of concept. And after 4 months, right? By the way, I documented all of this. I've got recordings that maybe at some point I will release, but I documented my early stages, cold calling and doing all of this outreach. But I did it in a sense that it's like it was gonna happen. And look, fortunately, I did have cold calling experience from sales, right? I'm not gonna pretend that I was an absolute newbie, right? But it was interesting that I'd never had to prospect real estate agents before to get new clients. But with all of that said, after 4 months, I finally landed my first client, and that client paid me $800 per month. I was $800 per month closer to my target. And it makes me smile, makes me crack up now, because I'm like, to where I am at now, to where I was back then, that was monumental. Not only was I starting to, build this business from scratch, but I actually landed a client. Someone said yes to the service that I was offering by executing this course. So making sure that you have the course and you execute on it is fundamental, right? I'm a strong believer that there are people out there that just buy courses, but it's actually not the course that's the problem. It's the person executing on it. But with that said, after the first client, I got the next one, and then I got the next one, and then I got the next one, until I reached that target of 4K. And the beautiful thing is, with this business model and with online businesses, you don't need to hire an office space. You don't need to hire an employee. I literally had my laptop. I built that website. I was paying subscriptions, which were maybe less than $1,000. It didn't take me very long to 4K profit that I could pay my mortgage and my expenses and be above water. That was the main thing, just be above water. And once I reached that point, I finally handed in my resignation letter. And it was the greatest feeling in the world. All of that weight on my shoulders, all of that anxiety of driving to work every single morning, not knowing what I was going to be hitting that, and coming back absolutely exhausted. My relationship with my partner was struggling. Everyone around me knew that I was turning into someone that I just knew I didn't want to become. To finally get to that point and say no more. And so once I handed in that resignation letter, I knew I was all in, and I also knew that there was no turning back. Even if I wanted to go back to that specific job, I wouldn't be able to. And so even though it was the scariest feeling, it was the most alive that I'd felt in a very long time. But I tell you, I can promise you something right now. But looking back today, the scariest thing for me now is thinking, what if I never decided to take that leap of faith? What if I decided to settle? That there gives me goosebumps. And so all of that to say is that if you're thinking about quitting your job or starting a business, remember, it is absolutely normal to feel scared. I'm not going to pretend and sit here that it's the easiest thing in the world. It's not. But if you feel scared and you're unsure and you just don't know where to start, those 3 steps that I just gave you will be at least a guiding light that helped me. And it hopefully gives you some hope that if you do decide to take a leap of faith, I hope my story showed you that it is possible to make that leap and build something real. And so if this resonated with you, drop a comment below with any topics that you might be struggling with or you want me to share in more detail, because I will be reading all of them. And my goal here is to help people that might be on a similar journey as me, or who are going through similar challenges that I went through. But until then, I thank you for watching this far, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.